All right, so today we're diving into something I think a lot of people can relate to, especially if you've ever been a university student, and that is the challenges of learning statistics.
Yeah, statistics can definitely be a hurdle for a lot of folks.
Yeah, it can be a real source of anxiety for people, but instead of getting into like formulas and equations, we're going to explore a different angle here.
Yeah, we're going to look at how giving students some psychological support can actually change how they feel about statistics, their confidence, and even how much anxiety they experience.
Exactly, and it's all based on some pretty interesting research, a systematic review, actually.
Yeah, it's called The Effect of Psychological Interventions on Statistics. Anxiety, Statistics, Self-Efficacy, and Attitudes Towards Statistics in University Students. Quite a mouthful.
It is quite a title.
It was published in the Educational Psychology Review pretty recently, January 6th, 2025.
Okay, so pretty fresh off the presses then, and I think what's interesting here is that we're talking about psychological support in a statistics context, which is not something you hear every day.
Right, it's a pretty unique approach.
Yeah, and the review really highlights that these interventions are directly targeting what's happening in students' minds, their thoughts, their feelings, their behaviors.
Yeah, it's not about changing the material itself or how it's taught.
No, it's more about giving them extra tools and support to deal with the challenges they might be facing.
Exactly. It's like giving them a toolkit to deal with the emotional and mental side of things.
I like that. A toolkit for stats anxiety. I mean, for our listeners who are all about getting to the good stuff quickly, getting those aha moments, I think this deep dive will be particularly interesting.
Yeah, we're going to unpack what the research says about how to maybe quiet down that statistics anxiety and help students feel better about themselves and more capable when they have to work with numbers.
Love it. So let's get into the details of this
Oh,
review.
sure.
So this wasn't just like looking at one study, right? This was a collection of research.
Exactly. A systematic review is designed to look at all the relevant research on a particular topic.
Mm.
And in this case, the researchers analyzed 11 studies,
Correct?
a pretty good number. And that involved a significant group of students, 1786 university students to be exact.
Wow, that's a lot of students.
Yeah, it's a pretty good sample size.
Okay, and were all of these studies set up in the same way?
Well, not entirely. The review included studies that had a longitudinal design, meaning they followed the students over time
Okay.
and checked in with them before and after they received the psychological support.
Gotcha. So like a before and after picture.
Right, exactly. And some of them were simpler, just looking at one group of students, while others were more controlled. They compared a group that got the intervention to a similar group that didn't. So we have a comparison group.
Oh, okay. So kind of like testing out different approaches.
Exactly. And these included what are called randomized controlled trials. Those are considered a pretty strong type of study, and also what are called non-randomized control studies.
Gotcha. So a good mix of research designs in there. Now, when you have multiple studies like this, do you typically just like add up all the results and get like a big average?
Well, ideally, you would do what's called a meta-analysis.
Okay.
That means statistically combining the results to get a more precise overall picture.
Makes sense.
However, in this case, a meta-analysis wasn't possible
Huh. Well, why not?
because of something called heterogeneity across the 11 studies.
Heterogeneity. Okay, break that down for us.
Yeah, no problem. So basically, think of it like comparing apples and oranges.
Okay.
The studies used very different types of psychological support. They involved students from different backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
and they even measured anxiety and confidence in different ways.
I see. So there are just too many differences to make a clean comparison.
Exactly. This variety, or heterogeneity as researchers call it, meant that statistically combining the results wasn't really reliable.
Makes sense. So what did they do instead?
Well, they did what's called a narrative synthesis, which basically means they described and summarized the findings of each study in a really structured way.
So instead of crunching numbers, they looked at the overall story the research is telling.
Right, precisely.
So what exactly were these studies measuring?
Yeah, so they were looking at three main things.
Okay.
First, statistics anxiety, which is basically that feeling of worry or unease when you encounter statistical concepts.
Yeah, I think we all know that feeling.
Second, they looked at statistics self-efficacy.
Okay, what's that?
That's basically how much a student believes in their ability to successfully handle tasks involving statistics, so it's like their confidence in their own skills.
Gotcha. So do they feel like they can actually do this stuff?
Right, and finally, they looked at students' attitudes towards statistics.
Okay.
In other words, how positively or negatively they view the subject as a whole.
All right, so we got anxiety, confidence, and overall attitude.
Yep, those are the three big ones.
So what did this research actually tell us about how these psychological interventions affect students?
Okay, well, let's start with statistics anxiety, because I think that's something a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, me included, for sure.
So the interesting thing is that the review didn't find one single type of intervention that consistently reduced anxiety across all the studies.
Huh. So there's no, like, magic bullet for stats anxiety.
Not really, no, at least not yet.
Okay. But you said some interventions did show some promise, right?
Yeah, some definitely seem to be more effective than others.
Okay, tell us more about those. What kind of approaches seem to make a difference?
Well, one of the things that came up is the power of combining different approaches, specifically combining gradual exposure to statistics with practical coping strategies for managing anxiety.
So it's like, don't just throw them in the deep end, give them some tools to help them swim.
Exactly. It's about addressing both the knowledge gap and the emotional response.
I like that. It's a two-pronged approach.
Right. And that's a takeaway that could be helpful for anyone facing any kind of daunting task, not just statistics.
That's a good point. It's not just about stats.
No, it's about how we approach any challenge that makes us anxious.
Okay, what about the second one? Self-efficacy. Did any of the psychological interventions help students feel more confident in their ability to actually do statistics?
Yes, definitely. That's one of the more positive findings of the review.
Okay.
They found that these interventions can significantly boost students' confidence in handling statistics.
That's great news.
Yeah, and it makes sense. When students believe they can succeed, they're more likely to put in the effort, to persevere, and ultimately do better.
So addressing mindset can actually have a real impact on performance.
It seems that way, yes.
Fantastic. Okay, what about the third one? Attitudes towards statistics. Can you really change how someone fundamentally feels about a subject through these interventions?
Well, the review suggests that, yes, some interventions did lead to more positive attitudes towards statistics.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's important because if students have a more favorable view of statistics, they're more likely to be open to learning it, to see its value, and maybe even use it in their future careers.
So it's not just about getting through the class, it's about changing their long-term perspective.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're seeing some positive results for self-efficacy and attitudes.
Yes.
Now, this review wasn't just about summarizing results, right? It also looked at how these studies were actually conducted.
You're right. They delved into what's called methodological considerations.
Okay, and why is that important?
Well, it's basically about assessing the quality of the research,
Gotcha.
looking at things like how they recruited participants, how the interventions were delivered, and how they measured the outcomes.
So making sure the research was done properly.
Exactly. And understanding these details helps us figure out how much confidence we can have in the findings.
Makes sense. So it's like checking their work.
In a way, yes.
Did the review also offer any suggestions for how to design even better interventions in the future?
Yes. Actually, they had some really valuable insights and suggestions based on their analysis. Well, for example, they suggested maybe tailoring the support to individual student needs, because not everyone learns the same way.
Right. Personalized learning.
Exactly. They also suggested exploring different combinations of psychological techniques and maybe focusing on specific aspects of anxiety or self-doubt.
So really refining and targeting the interventions.
Right, and it shows that this is an active area of research. People are working to improve these approaches all the time.
So there's more to come.
Definitely.
And speaking of more to come, the review also emphasized the need for more research in general, right?
Absolutely. They specifically highlighted the need for more research on the most effective ways to reduce statistics anxiety.
So while we've seen some promising approaches, we still need more data.
Yes, more research will help us figure out which techniques work best and why they work for some students and not others.
Okay, so let's bring this back to our listeners. If you're someone who's ever felt that knot in your stomach when you have to deal with numbers or you've doubted your ability to understand statistics, this review offers a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, it tells us that psychological factors play a huge role in how we learn.
Exactly, and it's not just about studying harder, it's about addressing those mental and emotional barriers.
Right. It's about recognizing that our confidence, our anxieties, our overall attitude, those things can be just as important as the actual material we're trying to learn.
That's a powerful insight. So to sum it all up, we haven't found a magic cure for statistics anxiety yet, but the research is pointing us in some promising directions.
Yes, and importantly, we've seen that psychological support can really make a difference in how students feel about statistics and how confident they are in their abilities.
Absolutely. So even though more research is needed, there are things we can do right now to help students succeed.
Definitely.
So here's a final thought for our listeners to chew on. If this review has shown us anything, it's that our psychological state plays a huge role in how we learn. So how can you apply this to other areas of your life where you might be facing challenges or feeling anxious or doubting yourself?
That's a great question.
Maybe the key to mastering any skill, whether it's statistics or something else, is not just about working harder, but also about understanding and managing your own mind.
Food for thought.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
And we'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.